Okay, hello, hello. We have a very special guest, one of my favorite old professors from the Grand Valley State University, Miss Chelsea Brehm over here. So I'm very excited to talk to her. She is within the sport management department over there and also has a bunch of experience with girls youth volleyball. So without further ado, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, feel free.
Yeah, hey guys. Super happy to be here with you, Lauren. I can't believe you've graduated 3 years ago already.
Yeah.
Time sure flies.
Yeah.
But like Lauren said, I am a professor in the sport management program at Grand Valley State University. I've been teaching here for the last decade. I've got some teaching and higher ed experience at Grand Rapids Community College and at Western Michigan University too. So kind of been all over the West Michigan area in terms of higher education. Um, I've spent a lot of years coaching, so I think my coaching career really started during my own undergrad
Hmm.
at Grand Valley. I played volleyball in college, obviously played in high school, and I had an opportunity to coach JV at a local Grand Rapids area team when I was a sophomore, I think. And so I started coaching obviously really, really young. Um, and gosh, if I could give advice to that little child at the
Yeah.
time, what I would do different, but that's a whole nother conversation. Now I still currently coach at the varsity level at my alma mater, so the high school that I
Hmm.
graduated from, and then I've coached a lot of travel volleyball too, like in the club, like more the private sector versus K-12.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's a little bit.
Awesome. Well, it was funny, just kind of like thinking of some of the questions I wanted to ask you. I almost like went back in time as like the Lauren, like the little Lauren in high school, like thinking like what did I want to ask my coach and like what are some things that I wanted to get like clarification on and just like how to approach certain things because I think at a high school level, especially as a young woman, you are trying to navigate just not only anything within the team that you're playing a sport with, but just like life itself. So that kind of leads to one of my questions that I would have loved to have had with one of my old coaches. But when it comes time for, you know, off season versus regular season, are there any strategies that you specifically use to kind of keep your athletes motivated during that time off? Or are you promoting more of like a, like, hey, that's your time to relax kind of period?
This is a really good question, and I think so. A lot of my answers obviously will come from specifically the sport of volleyball, which I think
Yeah.
is unique. But I know that this is happening in a lot of other sports too. In my opinion, unfortunately, the off season from high school volleyball now
Hmm.
is occupied with this extensive travel season.
Yeah.
So on one hand, as a varsity coach, it almost alleviates some of my duties and responsibilities because I don't have to spend a lot of time scheduling off-season programming because, 90% of my athletes in high school are playing travel volleyball. Like if we make a good postseason run, we finish our high school season in November. They've
Hmm.
already tried out for a club team. Those club practices start the first week of December, and they go all the way through the middle to the end of June, depending on when their nationals are scheduled. So literally December to June,
Hmm.
um, they're competing and playing for a team. So we don't give them any programming from a high school coach perspective because we
Okay.
know they're doing things. We do have the opportunity to schedule four man. So for like the 1 to 3 athletes in any given season that we have that don't play travel ball, we
Hmm.
will meet with them around the other things that they have scheduled. So it's not like hey, this is the schedule, you must come, it's a requirement. It's very much a flexible, hey guys, we'd love to get in the gym with you. Let us know some dates and times that work for you and we'll schedule that. So it's a very lackadaisical because in our minds as our
Hmm.
coaching staff, like we want them to be multi-sport athletes. We think
Hmm.
that's better for them as a like a holistic athlete development. And so it's again, it's never a pressure thing. It's just a hey, this is an opportunity. Starting in June, July, August, right before our preseason kind of starts, we do have 2 to 3 times a week of open gyms, right? And
Hmm.
again, those aren't required. And the language and the nature around them is, hey, if we want to hit the ground running come day one of practice and season,
Yeah.
then everyone's going to be here. And thankfully for us, I coach at a smaller school. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of buy-in with that. And we've had a lot of great success. And so from a historical perspective, our program is good and our athletes know that to continue greatness,
Yeah.
they want to be in the gym. And so I don't have to combat a lot of that off-season motivation because a lot of our kids are already doing things without us asking. So,
Hmm. I think it's funny that you mentioned the language around the workouts because I think it's so funny. I'll think back to like the optional workouts. And it's like it's never optional. It's always like, it's like your coaches tell you that, but really it's not or whatever. So, but no, I think that's really awesome too because I think especially with athletic trainers, I know one of their concerns with kids doing so much of that outside travel is just eventually when they get to back to school sports, like where you're coaching, it's like then they're just burnt out.
mhm.
So do you kind of are there any kind of indicators that you may look for as a coach to see like, wow, like one of my girls, like I think just did not take a break whatsoever and her body is just shot. Like, is there anything that you kind of do to like approach them and be like, hey, like maybe take a little bit more of a rest?
Yes, because I am such an advocate, and this is where my research lies, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
finishing my PhD right now, and it's literally looking at the phenomena of travel volleyball and the impact it's having on these young women and athletes that are
Yeah.
essentially competing 11 to 12 months out of the year. And so I have a super soft spot in my heart for these girls who are legitimately becoming burnt out mentally, physically, emotionally, and
Hmm.
they're not good athletes and they're not happy people when they're
Yeah.
exhibiting those signs. And so I have had some very serious conversations with girls that I am concerned for.
Yeah.
And that doesn't come from, hey, you're going to be a piece of crap athlete on this team. It comes from a place of you're struggling mentally and I'm very concerned for you. How can we fix this? And if that means missing a practice, if that means telling your club coach, like trying to empower them to have conversations with
Hmm.
other adults in their lives who ultimately are decision makers and control have a lot of power over them. And I
Yeah.
think as coaches, we need to understand the direct like verbal messages we send, but then also the indirect messages we send to these young people who love what they're doing, which is why they're doing it for 11 months out of the year, but
Hmm.
it's not healthy for them to be doing it at such a high level for such an extended amount of time. Um, I have big concerns over that. And they push back on it. They don't see it as this is what's good for me. They see it as I can't miss a practice, otherwise I'm not going to play, and otherwise coach isn't going to take me seriously. And that
Hmm.
makes me really sad, you know.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned the playing time too, because I remember going like again, like kind of like transporting back in time, like thinking about it's like everyone wants that playing time. Everyone wants to be maybe not even the star of the team, but just like again, like you said, like do what they are there to do and love to do. So my question is when an athlete can maybe hit a lull sometimes in their training or they feel like they're getting better, but still not getting the playing time that they desire per se, how do you approach those conversations without um I guess you could say, like, lack of a better word, like taking away the motivational aspect. Like, hey, like this is what you need to do and kind of lay it out.
I think one important piece of that conversation is really helping athletes understand what's in their control and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when Chelsea's not playing because Lauren's playing over her, I get all of these upset feelings towards
Mm-hmm.
you, right? And
Yeah.
then that literally breaks down team cohesion and unity. And so
Yeah.
helping athletes understand what can you control. You can't control Lauren's talent and ability, but you can control your own effort,
Mm-hmm.
attitude. I'm a big fan of all of the intangibles in sport as an athlete. So the leadership you bring, the attitude you bring, the communication you bring, the effort you bring, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think those things get to be should be rewarded in certain ways. If it's not through playing time, it's through, captain status, which I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of electing captains. I like the team to, vote on captains, but
Yeah.
so I think helping athletes understand that, like what they're in control of. And then the other thing that I see often is, for a couple of the athletes on our high school team who don't play travel ball,
Mm-hmm.
they get really upset saying, man, Lauren's playing over me. Well, or Lauren's better than me, or Lauren's stats are better than me, or her kills, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, Lauren did just play travel volleyball for 7 months and you didn't. And so that young athletes these days, I think, have this unrealistic expectation of comparing themselves to others when they're not comparing
Yeah.
apples to apples, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're comparing apples to oranges. She just spent 7 extra months having practice 2 to 3 times a week and playing
Yeah.
on most likely a higher level team. Um, and you didn't. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can minimize, I think, if you can have those conversations like tactfully and strategically, you can help minimize athletes' angst and anxiety and worry over the playing time and help them understand the bigger picture and then obviously what's directly in their control.
Yeah, because when I was thinking of that question, I would often kind of, because I remember my program was not a lot of us were playing outside club sports just because our coach actually discouraged it. And he instead tried to maybe place things with like throughout the summer, like camps at Hope College, where we would
Mhm.
just play like other high schoolers that weren't in these club programs. Granted, you'd have like a girl here or there, like doing all that stuff and being like, hey, I'm not going to participate in that. But it was still like, I think he tried to place everyone at like this, like, same kind of like level in a way. But no,
Mhm.
I like it's interesting because I was thinking about that earlier. But yeah, with like the captains, I'm also interested what your take is on this too, because I think many coaches are different how they go about that process of leadership versus just picking captains because they're the oldest on the team. So every team has that leader or leaders. How do you identify those, and then what qualities maybe do you like particularly look for?
Well, like I said, we have decided that we're not going to handpick
Mm-hmm.
captains. We want that to be a team thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that, and it's usually every season it's a unanimous thing. Like
Yeah.
the girls themselves know who they look up to, who they admire, who they think, is going to do a good job of leading them, who they want to represent when, captains are called on for certain things. And so
Mm-hmm.
um I I default to the athlete's trust and their desires 99% of the time. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
different in volleyball, like to pick a floor captain, right? So like Lauren, you could be the girl that all of the athletes on the team admire, look up to. They're going to respect you. They're going to follow and do what you say when coach isn't around, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but unfortunately, Lauren, you're not seeing the floor and having playing time, and I need a floor captain, right, who's going to be on the floor for 6 rotations, essentially. And so that by
Yeah.
default, that ends up being your setter. And that's a position that I train. So it's easy for me to help develop those leadership skills in someone who's going to be a floor captain in times of, competition when they're going to have to communicate with the official and,
Mm-hmm.
be the voice of the team on the floor. And I think, gosh, you asked about specific traits and qualities. And I think what I value most, and like if I look back on all my team's setters that held that floor captain position, there's definitely some emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
That comes with it. Like I don't need a hothead who's gonna mouth off. So I need someone who's emotionally intelligent and capable of reining in their emotions, especially in heated matches and when things get tough. So that's a really big one. Um, I think someone who has strong communication skills is really important because obviously with an official, but then also with their teammates, right? When
Hmm.
things do get hairy on the floor and we're down by 10, and they've gone on an 8-point run, the other team
Hmm.
has, who's going to be able to bring everyone together on the floor, put them at ease, right? And kind of look people in the eye and say, listen, this is what I need from you in this moment. And you can do it because we've practiced it, right? Um,
Hmm.
so those are probably the two biggest things, the emotional intelligence and then an effective, strong communicator.
Yeah, no, those are good. I definitely, because I think with high school too, that can be a little tough in a way in terms of finding that. And because it's like high school alone is just like tough as it is, so it's definitely, I think those take time, but if you like find that in that age bracket, I think that's like gold in a way. um so kind of moving on from that to maybe the more like team cohesion part of it. I know every year's a new year, there may be some new faces. Are you the kind of coach to maybe push that team bonding style or like agenda a little on the players? Or is that something you kind of just like, again, like leave up to them and let it happen on their own time, whether it's practice or games?
This is a really good question, and honestly, something that we have gone back and forth on. So there have been
Yeah.
seasons where it's like, we don't need you guys to like each other outside of this gym and outside
Hmm.
of our practice and competition space. And so we don't care if you hang out outside of here. You have to respect each other and trust each other while you're here, but could care
Hmm.
less what happens outside of here. And I think that has worked well for us.
Hmm.
I also think there is something to be said about forcing them to be together outside of practice and competition that allows them the chance to get to know each other for who they are as people, not just as athletes and
Yeah.
teammates, but also like competition with each other, right?
Hmm.
Um, so like I said, we've gone back and forth, and it usually is dictated by the makeup of personalities. So if we know there's a handful of girls and it's going to be clicky and it's going to
Hmm.
like we know that there are barriers we're going to have to overcome because of the personality group. Then honestly we do try to do some out of gym
Yeah.
bonding time, whether that's
Hmm.
the form of team dinners and they're just all hanging out and doing each other's hair and eating food or taking naps or watching a show together. um,
Hmm.
what did we do? We talked about doing like an orchard thing last year, but it's also like, you know what? They give so much time as athletes. We don't want to be a time
Hmm.
suck outside of athletic practice and competition. So I don't even think we ended up doing that last year. But um, I think we as a coaching staff just really sit down and think about, okay, what is this roster going to look like? Who are going to be the new
Hmm.
faces, personalities to the group? And then we kind of decide that way. And we do rely on our on captains. And we ask them too, do you guys want to do something? Do you want us to coordinate something? I think a lot of our coaching decisions that are made, we really try to involve at
Hmm.
least some of the athletes so that we just have a better vibe and pulse for what they're thinking and feeling. So
Yeah.
it
No,
depends.
yeah, that totally makes sense too. I think because I just remember a team bonding experience of mine from basketball. It was like right after, because it was already scheduled, the team bonding. It was like right after a game where like I want to say four girls like got into it with one another. And then the next day is our team bonding and it's in an escape room. So we're all stuck there for like an hour trying to get out of this room, working together. And then you still got like these girls that just have it out for each other. So I just remember at that point, I was just like, maybe something that doesn't require us to be like locked in a room for an hour, I think would be a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I was interested to see like what your approach is to that stuff. And I know you mentioned just kind of laying out like all the personalities in front of you and who may go like better together in a way. Is there, I hate to go back to motivation, but do you also take that time to maybe look at like what players are going to be like motivated more like extrinsically versus like intrinsic in a way too.
Yeah, definitely. So many of our girls that play travel ball
Mm-hmm.
have dreams of playing in college.
Okay.
And so however you view that, I think people could make an argument for that's like external motivation and internal motivation, right? Like
Yeah.
they have their sights set on getting a college scholarship opportunity offer,
Yeah.
which would be an external part, but the intrinsic motivation for them to achieve that, right,
Mm-hmm.
is there and very strong. So I would say that's probably half of our high school roster, and
Okay.
gosh, we've had a couple D1 athletes in the last couple years, a lot
Oh,
of
wow.
Division two and three, a couple NAIA kids. So those are ones that we usually don't have to worry about. Sometimes those are the ones that become the mental head cases, right? Because the stress and the pressure is there because they
Yeah.
haven't been recruited yet, um, plays a role for them.
Yeah.
Um, but then the girls, I look at the other girls who aren't necessarily, they don't have the goals of being college bound to play a sport. Um, and I think for a lot of them, it's this intrinsic motivation to like be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. Like I said at
Yeah.
the beginning, like our volleyball program is very established in our community. Like it's a very
Mm-hmm.
big deal. It's like people don't even care anymore that we win our regional. They're like, okay, let us know when they make it to states.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is. And I think because historically that has always been a big deal, and we are a volleyball school, we're not a football or a basketball school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think like these young women really strive to like be a part of that, and they know that it's
Yeah.
something special and it's something big. Um, so I would say that that's probably one of the biggest driving motivational factors for them is just the thought of being a part of something that's special, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that because I feel like it's interesting looking back on the different personalities that mixed with different almost like how well they did with different stressors and like different pressures that either they put on themselves or that were put on them. So I remember like for our Hope College camp thing for basketball, we um I didn't tell anyone yet that I was quitting my senior year. And it was for a lot of different reasons. Some were because of the coaching, some wasn't. But I remember, like, because I knew I wasn't returning, it was almost more fun for me that I didn't have to worry about all that other stuff. And it was weird because that was the best I'd ever performed at those camps. And then so
Wow.
my coach was then so surprised that I was quitting. He's like, "But you did so good." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I knew I didn't have to face the consequences of not doing good." So it's definitely interesting hearing like how different players function under different stress and all that. So yeah, but not to
Did you
go
end up
on.
actually quitting your senior year?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, but and it was the right decision. I did miss it, of course, but it was definitely for the best. But to kind of move on to our last couple questions, I named the series Peak Conversations, and I feel like the peak or like the summit of something is symbolic in a way of aspiring towards something in life, whether that's a job, a sport, etc. So, what is it that aspires you or just to like achieve something in your position as a coach and maybe like those moments that kind of like keep you going that are like gratifying in a way.
I mean, honestly, it's the relationships with players. So
Mm-hmm.
like because it's a small roster size and because it's, hometown local community, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I have seen these girls grow up right in front of my eyes. Like a lot of them were our ball girls when they were in elementary and middle school. And so by the time
Yeah.
they get to, play in a Lakewood jersey at the high school level, at the varsity level, they've been around the gym for however many years and they know it and they get it. And the relationships that you build with them because you're in the gym with them day in and day out for 3 to 4 months is really special.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, sometimes when I have to drive from Allendale an hour to
Hmm.
practice because I commute really far. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to stay at work. I need to get things done. Like it's hard to be in the gym at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes, I might be admittedly a little annoyed or frustrated. And it's like, okay, this better be a darn good practice. And then you get there and it ends up being a great practice. And you're like, this is why I do this, to see individual young women, right, as individuals overcome, like you said, all the things they have going on because high school is not easy. It's a very confusing time for them
Yeah.
to create an opportunity for them to have an outlet that's not in front of their phones, in front of their social media, that's thinking about a boy, right? Like to
Hmm.
give them a safe space for an hour and a half to 2 hours every day for that season and watch them grow and watch them develop and watch them mature and watch them fail. That's a
Yeah.
fun part of it too, right? Because the faster you fail, as long as you're failing forward, like you're getting better and you're learning and you're growing and just being able to develop those relationships with them is really the only reason I do it, in all honesty. I mean, I don't get paid enough to deal with the headaches, that
Yeah.
come along with it. So it literally boils down to the joy that I get from having relationships with those girls and
Hmm.
getting invited, to the open houses and then the weddings and then the baby
Oh,
showers.
yeah.
Because once you've been doing it long enough, you start feeling really old and that
Yeah.
that happens. So
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I can only assume what some of my coaches feel like when they remember me as like little petite Lauren in like seventh grade. And then I'm just like, hey, like I'm still home, but like I'm doing my master's. And they're like, how old are you? And I'm like, yeah. So, but my last question for you is, if you could give one piece of advice to coaches just starting out in their careers, what would you leave them in a way?
gosh, this isn't going to be very like inspiring by any means,
That's
but I
totally fine.
think one of the things that I could have done better in my early years was I understood it, but I wasn't accepting of it that things just don't go according to plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are so many factors that are out of your control as a coach, that are out of your control, like that are out of your athlete's control too. And so being a prepared coach to me, is having a game plan, having a practice plan. You show up to the gym every day, but you also understand that there are certain factors that just play into the daily lives and it's not always going to go according to your practice plan, or you're going to spend more time on this drill and less time on this drill than you thought, or a drill that you designed is literally going to flop. And it is what it is. Your athletes are going to trust you and value you more as a person and as a human being versus just their coach. If you admit, listen, this didn't go according to plan, and you roll with the
Mm-hmm.
punches in a calm, cool, collected demeanor instead of getting super stressed and freaked out about it. Because kids
Mm-hmm.
are super intuitive and they read into body language, they read into your tone, they read into so many different things. And so I think that's really important. And I think, creating athlete buy-in by giving them a voice and giving them a say. A lot of us tend to coach the way we were coached, which was, maybe very authoritarian style and
Mm-hmm.
very like, this is my team. And that is just such a wrong way to go about creating a sense of community and trustworthiness in a team. So give your athletes a voice, let them create team rules and they're going to be more likely to hold each other accountable to that because it's their rules. It's not
Mm-hmm.
coach Chelsea's rules. So those are probably two of the biggest things that I think looking back, because I started coaching at such a young age, I didn't know because I was so naive and
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that I had to like set these really strict rules and boundaries because I was young and I wanted them to know that I knew what I was doing. I was overcompensating essentially,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and if I had just not cared about any of that, then those first couple seasons probably just would have been a lot less stressful, I guess is
Yeah.
what
Huh. No, yeah, I never really like thought of it that way. I was like, man, if my coach maybe just told me once in a while that they didn't know something, I might look at them as a little bit more of like a human being in a way of like this person isn't just here to yell at me for 2 hours each day after school. Like
no,
they
yeah.
actually, yeah, like they actually like make mistakes and just like me. So No, that's I definitely appreciate that. So, and I'm glad that like that outlook is kind of like being shifted from that like authoritarian style to like, hey, like I'll hear you out. Like that's what I'm here for, you
Yeah.
know? So,
It's long
yeah.
overdue. I think we're finally now, well, in volleyball anyways, like seeing a
Yeah.
major shift in that. Like those of us who were coached that way are now the
Hmm.
coaches and we're realizing, gosh, you can get so much more out of your players if they know you care about them and love them and support them in
Hmm.
terms of being a person and not just, I'm using you as a tool to get wins under my name as a coach. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
no problem.
So,
This was great.
thank you. But yeah, without further ado, again, Professor Chelsea Brehm, thank you so much. You're amazing, and I can't wait to talk to you soon.
No problem. Good luck, Lauren.
All right, thanks.